What is happening, good people? Surprise. That's what this show is all about today. And Zay Jones and a few more people. We'll talk about all the surprises from camp 2022, and we'll do it just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on? What's happening? I'm straightening up my brim as I sit here and welcome you to another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, your host of your daily Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. I've seen training camp for years. I've been covering the team for, I think, 13 years now, and maybe even unofficially a little bit longer than that. Never have I seen guys come into camp and actually shock and surprise me, right? I would say James Robinson a few years back or a couple of years back, but to be honest, we didn't see a lot of contact because that was the year that there were a lot of COVID restrictions, and therefore there wasn't very much tackling. And when there was, we were only in camp about 30 minutes at a time because there was a lot of social distancing. So I couldn't tell you that we heard about him. There have been some surprises in this training camp, and there have been some pleasant surprises. And it's exactly what this team needs, because any team worth its mettle needs to have some things happen beyond the standard X's and O's, and also beyond the standard expectations based on who you drafted here and where you paid here and what have you. I'm going to name some surprises from the 22 camp to 2022 camp today. First of all, I'm going to get that number right. Second, I'm going to name some surprises, some guys that I didn't have high expectations for, but have seen to deliver in training camp, and it really changed the feeling that some people have about them. We're going to talk about the biggest one, Zay Jones, in just a second. I'm going to tell you some of the other guys that have been pleasant surprises, and I'm going to tell you what to look forward to. On defense, Chris Claybrooks has really stepped his game up and been a very, very big surprise in the secondary. But he has a couple of running mates in the secondary. Everyone wanted to get rid of the one they call Dewey Wingard. He has played well, and Rayshon Jenkins has also played well in that secondary. But we are not going to bury it. We're going to get right back to Zay Jones. Unreal. Longtime Florida Times, Jacksonville.com columnist Gene Fournette says he's the best receiver since Jimmy Smith. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, because Allen Robinson was pretty good when he was here. But he might not be far off. And I know everyone's saying, well, what does that mean for Christian Kirk? Is everybody right? Did they spend too much money on Christian Kirk? Is Christian Kirk this bust? And all of a sudden, now, is this a situation just like Dante Fowler not being as good as everyone thought, but it was okay that they used the top 3 pick on Dante Fowler because Yannick Ngakoue was as good as Dante Fowler was supposed to be, so it balances itself out. I'm not ready to write off Christian Kirk either, because I think Christian Kirk's going to have a big year. Christian Kirk could very well lead the Jaguars in yards and receptions. But I will tell you, to a man, there are a lot of people that wonder what the hell the Jaguars were thinking about by signing Zay Jones when they could have kept DJ Chark. I probably was one of them. In fact, I'll drop the word probably and tell you I was one of them. However, if I was, which I think I was, we can backtrack now and say I was wrong. It's something I wish we all did a little bit and just say, you know what, I got that wrong. And admitting that you got it wrong, you have to say someone that you were openly critical of, maybe Trent Baalke, got it right. I don't know if he made that decision, but he is the general manager, so we're going to give him credit for it, because trust me, if it didn't work, ultimately it will fall on him and we would blame him for it. But what have I seen from Zay Jones? The same thing you saw in preseason game 2 against Cleveland. A guy who runs crisp routes, high points the ball, makes contested catches, is longer than I remember. I'm not saying he's a big guy because he's still real thin, but he has a wiry strength to him. He has muscular arms, and he eats the entire route tree up, drag routes, all kinds of routes, down the field, high pointing the ball, finding. I started tweeting it out when I was at some of the training camps of how he split the defense and went up over everybody and caught caught the ball between two people and then ran into the end zone, and there was a tree behind the fence, and he said he told the tree, they can't stop me. They need to stop playing with me. And then the wind blew and the tree was like doing like this. So I think the tree agreed with him, like, stop playing with me. By the way, I'm nodding my head if you don't see me, if you're not watching on YouTube. But he has been a pleasant surprise. And the thing that impressed me was when Christian Kirk did not play in the preseason game. He hasn't played in either one of them, but he didn't play the other night against Cleveland when the team went with all of their guys. The thing that impressed me was he was able to transfer what we saw in practice from the practice field to an actual game situation. And then after that, when they had the live scrimmage in the stadium 2 days after the game situation, he kept doing it. Toe tap touchdowns, deep balls, getting behind people, snatching the ball in live action when they were going across the middle and guys were laying wood and knocking guys all over the place, and he did not care. And then he addressed the media afterwards, and there's a quiet, cool confidence about it. I said that when I got close enough to talk to him, I was going to ask him about the smooth criminal move, and that's the move. If you haven't seen it, whenever he goes down, he somehow uses his core. He doesn't bend his legs. He goes right back up like a robot, like Michael Jackson, and it looks fake, but it is absolutely real. So I said I was going to ask him about it. I also said that when I finally got face-to-face with him, I was going to ask him about his haircut, right? Or the lack of one. And be it for me to talk because I'm a barber and half the time I don't get haircuts, but he working with a little extra something. I don't know if you saw it during the press conference, but he had a little mustache, and then whatever he was working with, if you saw what's love got to do with it when Ike went to court, Ike Turner went to court, Larry Fishburne, it's got a little mushroom thing going on there. Like if the Beatles were black, they probably that, whatever that is. But he's playing so good, I didn't want to ask him about it. That haircut's looking better and better, right? Hell, if we ain't careful, if he continues to play the way he's practiced and played earlier, he might want to start marketing some wigs and just have everybody in the stands wearing those things the way Gardner Minshew had everybody wearing headbands. I'm telling you, he has been a pleasant surprise, and I'm joking and I'm kidding, but he has been a pleasant surprise for this team. And I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. I think they're going to be the yin and the yang, the peanut butter and the jelly, the frick and the frack that really allows Trevor Lawrence to have the kind of year that we think he should have. And he is a pleasant surprise who, at 4 years, $30 million, might end up looking like the bargain steal of free agency in the entire NFL. I'm going to talk about some other guys that are pleasant surprises in camp this year. One that I mentioned too, a big guy named Devon Hamilton. I'll get to him and those other guys I mentioned, and I'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you about LinkedIn, man. Listen, as you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team. As always, you need the right people on your team. And LinkedIn are those folks. You got to post your profile, man. You need sometimes you can be as sharp as you want to be, but guess what? You just aren't getting it done by yourself, right? You need LinkedIn. Jobs here to help it make it easier for you to find the people that you want to talk to. I'm going to give you a personal experience. My daughter was in the Army. She was getting out of the Army on a medical discharge. About 3 months before she got out of the Army, she put her information on LinkedIn. They called her, and guess what happened? She had a job waiting on her in Charlotte, North Carolina, before she was even officially discharged. They create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn, jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. You heard it. Then add your job, and the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy for focus on candidates with just the right skill set and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn jobs #1 in delivering quality hires and leading competitors. Barbershops use it all the time. I've used it before, and it absolutely works. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And we're going to apply some of this good talk to y'all here today on Locked On Jaguars, talking about surprises and guys that have to play well or that have to provide the help, the great help and the great assistance that these teams need in order to get over the hump. It is extremely important for Jacksonville because they have perennially been one of the least talented and one of the least most effective and dysfunctional franchises in the NFL for quite a long time. They have Travon Walker, they have Trevor Lawrence, they have Travis Etienne, and some other parts, Josh Allen, that you expect to play well. What could help them get over the hump quicker? What could help them actually play better, quicker, faster, and give more long-term hope? That's if they start to hit on people and get production from places that you don't expect. We talked about Zay Jones in segment 1. Segment 2, I'm going to talk about Devon Hamilton and a couple of other people. But namely Devon Hamilton, because if we go back in history, and I wish I could find the date, I did a podcast saying that he's a guy that you should look for in the offseason to take a step to move in a more positive direction. Now, I went back and forth with folks as little as a month ago that before, right around the time camp started, that were doing way too early depth charts, and they had Malcolm Brown starting and Roy Robertson Harris starting, and then somebody else started. Oh, it was Folo Fadukazi, of course, because he signed as a free agent. And I was like, no, wait a minute. What about Devon Hamilton? Devon Hamilton at time was a wrecking ball last year. He wasn't just a nose guard. He was a guy that showed you that he could really get up the field and also make plays in the backfield. I've stood in practice around people that have coached for a long time, and there's always two people that they look at and they go, that's what it looks like. One is Cam Robinson, the offensive tackle. The second one is Devon Hamilton. 6'4", 330 pounds, third year out of Ohio State. Really makes us forget about that draft when they took CJ and Caleb early, and it really hadn't panned out the way none of us or any of us wanted, although shout out to Caleb because the one thing I can tell you, he does work extremely hard. But Devon Hamilton has won that nose tackle position. Malcolm Brown is no longer a member of the Jaguars. Cut, let go, released. Make no mistake about it, Malcolm Brown will start in the middle. And he should. He is their best interior player since when they had Marcel Darius a couple of years ago in 2017 when they made their run. But he's about that big, too. He's a big, physical, freaky guy out of Ohio State. Don't like to see guys get hurt, but just the other night, he collapsed the dude so bad that the dude's going to miss the entire season for the Cleveland Browns. By the way, hopefully that player will have a speedy recovery. But that's what he is. He's that big, he's that strong, and he's that destructive. There are some folks in the defensive backfield that have been impressive as well. And I'm going to go back to offense in segment 3. And I'm going to tell you about a show that I want to do. It might not be the next show, but it's a show I'm going to do in the future because it's real, real important. In the defensive backfield, there are 3 guys. All of the talk coming into the season was about Tyson Campbell, Shaquille Griffin, and Andre Sisco, and rightfully so. Those are the 3 guys you're going to count on the most in the secondary. But a lot of folks have written off Rayshawn Jenkins because he got hurt and he didn't necessarily play well last year. Can't write him off. He has been all over the place. He recovered. He caused the fumble, and a fumble that was recovered by Shaq Griffin against Cleveland. And he has been all over the place in practice, getting interceptions, getting tip balls, being a menace, and also being one of the emotional leaders in that secondary group. Another player that has played really, really well, especially over the last few days, has been Chris Claybrooks. Real good athlete, also has value as a kick returner. Might be, I have to find out, he might be the fastest player on the Jaguars team. I may ask that question. Is he the fastest? But he adds value in the kicking game. He has value on special teams. But it has been his play in these scrimmages and the way he's practiced and finding a way to get his hands on the ball that has been impressive to me. The other day, he was running step for step with the receiver, and C.J. Beathard went deep down the middle on a post route. Chris Claybrooks turned into the wide receiver out of those two players, separated by 2 steps, and made a diving catch that had the entire defensive sideline, including the coaches, erupting, and they ran on the field and had to stop the action for 5 minutes. Unbelievable effort from the product out of Memphis. He is looking very, very good for the Jaguars, and is going to be a guy that is very hard or very difficult to cut. They're going to have some decisions that they have to make. I think Monteric Brown is playing really well. I like that Crawford kid too. Could this mean that a veteran like Trey Herndon is in trouble? Could this mean a player like Rudy Ford is in trouble? Absolutely. All of those things could be true. Now, Dewey Wingard. Dewey Wingard has been a guy that everyone has tried to get rid of for a long time. Dewey Wingard has played extremely well in practice and in the one preseason game. Dewey Wingard will be on this team, number 42. There's a lot of groupthink. People found a reason to start joking and hating on the guy, and all of us did it, and I did it too. You can forget about that. He's going to be around. So that's 3 players in the secondary. It's going to be, the Jaguars are going to have some interesting decisions to make, and they may even be able to trade some guys and get some compensation for them instead of just outright cutting them. So we'll see. I want to talk about a former basketball player in our third and final segment who's done a little bit more than I thought he was going to be able to do. I'll tell you who I'm talking about in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I have a very important message for you right now. Let's just say you're hanging out with some friends and you're putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many, and as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby, you're right down the street, you can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, more importantly, you killed someone. Everyone knows about the risks of drunk driving and driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again and play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Very important message. And we thank you in our third and final segment for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. I take that message very, very seriously. And I'm very, very proud to make that announcement. We all do need to be careful, especially now that school is back in and going to sporting events. You can never, ever be too careful. Chris Manhertz has been another player that has been a pleasant surprise. Number 84 not only looks the part, but he's been playing the part so far in practice, and we'll see if it translates to the game. One of those crazy trivia questions: who caught Trevor Lawrence's first touchdown pass in his NFL career? You got it. It was Chris Manhertz. It was about as unexpected as you expect, or you would have expected, but he didn't do much after that. Known as a blocker, former basketball player who has been converted to a football player. Well, folks, I'm telling you, he has improved. He's improved his body. He looks like more than a blocker. He looks like a guy who can also be a threat in the passing game and even running after the catch. So look forward to Chris Manhertz making a possible contribution bigger than you thought he was going to make, because I can tell you right now he's on the 53, and I can also tell you he's going to be on the field a lot for this team this year. While Evan Ingram's running around, even though Evan Ingram can block, Evan Ingram's running around catching balls, Chris Manhertz is going to be doing a lot of the dirty work. And don't be surprised if he's one of those guys that gets 20 touches and 12 or 13 of them are for first downs and another 4 or 5 of them are from red zone touchdowns. I'm telling you, that's just how good Chris Manhertz look. He's going to lead me into something I want to talk about. If not tomorrow, I'm trying to set it up. I'm going to talk about it next week. Basketball players who turn into football players, and we've seen it over the years with Antonio Gates, Jimmy Graham. Of course, there have been people that were both, like Julius Peppers and Tony Gonzalez. But this was a little bit different because it hits home for us. And not just with Chris Manhertz, with number 1 overall pick Travon Walker. A buddy of mine coaches AAU in Atlanta. His name is Emory. And Emory has coached NBA All-Stars. And Emory has a bunch of kids that he's coached that are playing around the country right now in the NFL. Emory coached against Travon Walker, and he told me everything about Travon Walker's game. He says he was undersized, big guy, but at 6'5" was able to push around 6'8" guys and 6'9" guys, and you knew he was going to be a beast because of the way he played. And now some of those skills translate to the football field. I'm going to ask Emory about some of his guys. I'm going to ask him about what he saw in Travon Walker, and I'm going to explain the skill sets that allow a guy who played basketball and some of those traits and characteristics that'll help guys, especially now that we have 2 of them, in the National Football League. That's going to be a little bit of fun. We'll do it for a segment or 2. And it'll give you another way to look at Travon Walker and at Chris Manhertz. George Smith, who is missing this season, unfortunately, with a knee injury, was another guy who played basketball. He's 6'7", who played basketball in high school and probably could have gone to college to play basketball, but chose to play football. We're going to discuss all of that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a different way to look at some of our homegrown players here in Jacksonville on Locked On Jaguars. I want you guys to make sure you stick with us and make your second listen the Locked On Fantasy Football Show with Vinny Iyer. I ran into a guy at practice the other night, and he says, "Hey, man, your network is huge. You guys got Vinny Iyer." I said, "Yeah, we do." So that means that Vinny is, in the hearts and minds of fantasy football folks, one of the preeminent people in the country at talking about fantasy football. And you can figure that out, too, by making him your next listen on the Locked On Podcast Network on Locked On Fantasy Football Draft. Make sure you like and subscribe and go to the YouTube page as well. All right, man, y'all take care of each other. Until tomorrow, we'll get to preview this weekend's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which will also be played at home, where the starters will get a little bit of a push and we'll play a little bit longer. We'll get a chance to match up against some guys and see how our team is going to fare. Until then, you guys take care of each other. We'll see you tomorrow with our preview of the Steelers and Jaguars. I'm Tony Wiggins here with Locked On Jaguars, and we thank you for making us your first listen.